Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Space Explorers workshop, an online interaction with an astronomer. Today, our guest is Miss Arushi Nath, the 2023 winner of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada's Young Astronomer Award. Thank you, ma'am, for being here.
Thank you so
Before
much.
I introduce Ms. Nath to everyone, I request that all students submit their questions to the Google form that is pinned to the chat and in the description box below this video. As I mentioned earlier, Ms. Arushi Nath is the Young Astronomers Award winner for the year 2023. She likes to dabble with science, math, hardware, and algorithms to solve hard problems for the public good. Over the last 7 years, the grade 9 student has built robots, battlebots, rockets, and rovers, and participated in over 50 hackathons, winning many of them. This includes the 2020 NASA Space App Global Award. Ms. Arushi has a special passion for space and astronomy. Her latest project, developing algorithms to determine asteroids' physical properties, and the success of NASA's Dark Asteroid Deflection mission, won the best of the Canada-wide Science Fair, CWSF, 2023 award. She won the same award last year, making her the first 2-year consecutive winner since 1989. When Ms. Arushi is not solving astronomy-related challenges, she likes to use open data for civic research and advocacy, and regularly makes deputations to local and provincial governments on a range of issues. You can find her blogging about her projects on Hot Pop Robot. Ms. Arushi, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here talking to everyone today. And my name's Arushi, as Shruti mentioned, and today I'll be talking a bit about my maker journey and how it all started, and then giving you guys advice on how to get started with your own astronomy-related projects. So with that, I can share my screen and we can get started. So just a bit of background. I'm from Toronto in Canada, so quite far away from India, and it's just actually 7 a.m. here. And I'm a grade 9 student, which means I'm 14 years old. And today I'll be talking about a range of topics. But first, I'm gonna give you a short introduction. I have always been interested in astronomy, science, and space exploration since I was really young. How many of you guys regularly look up at the night sky and maybe count how many stars there are, look at the planets, try to identify different constellations? Well, that's what I love doing. And ever since I can remember, I remember looking at the night sky, trying to find patterns in constellations, trying to look for different planets through binoculars. And that's really where my passion for astronomy started. And I believe the best way to learn about a subject is to start making projects, because this allows you to explore different aspects of the project, meet new people, and learn so many exciting things. So I started making astronomy-related projects. I started off very simple. When I was starting, that was around where the Curiosity rover had landed on Mars. And this fascinated me a lot, that we could land a rover on a totally different planet. So I thought, why not try to replicate that rover with whatever knowledge I already had? So I took an old container and I called it CurioSpot. I then attached motors and wheels that I found in my old mechano box to make the robot move. I attached a sensor which allowed it to find obstacles, and then the robot would avoid the obstacles. And I made this project and I was really happy with it, and it kind of motivated me to continue working on astronomy related projects. And since then, I've made over 40 different projects related to astronomy, science, and so forth. And each time that I make a project, I get to use new skills that I learned, and make the projects even more complex as they go on. And one of my favorite ways of making projects is participating in hackathons. So, how many of you guys have or know what a hackathon is, or know some local hackathons around you? Feel free to put the answer in the chat. And in my case, I really love hackathons. If you don't know, hackathons is a type of event where they give you several challenges you can try to solve, and then they only give you 48 hours to solve them. So there you have to use all the skills you have at the moment, all the material you have at the moment to try to find the best solution possible. And this is really a fun experience for me because it allows you to think outside the box and really look at your inner creativity to find an answer. And that's why over the last 7 years, I participated in over 45 hackathons. And one of the best parts of these events is meeting new people because you get the chance to talk and network with people who have similar interests to you, who have different interests to you. You get to come together, you get to make teams, and you get to share the skills that you guys have to solve the challenge. And one of my favorite hackathons is the NASA Space Apps Challenge. And I've participated in it since 2014 every year. And I really like this hackathon because it's completely astronomy themed. And every year, it's normally held at a local university here in Toronto, but it's also held in hundreds or several locations around the world. And you really get the chance to listen to guest speakers, make your project. There's mentors there to help you if you need help. And it's a fun experience to present your project at the end and then listen to other presenters and see how they solve the challenge differently. And from 2014 to about 2020, I loved participating in this hackathon. And I decided, why not actually help this hackathon become better? Which is why I've started giving presentations at the NASA Space Apps, especially the Youth NASA Space Apps, which is completely targeted at youth students. And it's really fun looking at other projects and seeing how they progress over the 48 hours. Though one of my favorite things will always remain making hardware projects, because this allows you to actually get really hands-on and then with your own hands make something cool. And making something hardware doesn't require a lot of material. Like you don't really need to buy anything from outside. Normally, all the material you need is already at your house. And I actually have ended up making my house into a makerspace. I used old puppets, old toys, and just broke them apart. Like, how many of you guys have had old toys and just thrown them away? Well, for me, I never like to do that. I always used screwdrivers to pull the project apart, see what's actually inside them. Sometimes I found motors in my toys, sometimes I found a sensor, sometimes I just found material like wood that was very useful. And it allowed me to make several of my projects actually by breaking up my toys and then using the materials. So remember that all projects don't need to be expensive. You can just use household materials. And one of my favorite projects that I used toys for was actually in the early stages. I had some nice dolls that I wasn't using anymore. So I thought, what could I do with these? And I decided, why not attach motors to the arms and legs of these dolls to make them move and dance? So that's exactly what I did. I found an old wooden frame, attached a few motors, like you can see in this image, and then attached strings, which connected to the dolls. And here's actually a short video that I'm going to play of these dolls in action at a maker festival. So you can see on the top, the motors are moving, and then this is causing the hands to move. And you can also see there's a toy on the side, which looks pretty cool. And it attracted a lot of attention because it's so hands-on and visual and people can see it. So I called it the cosmic dance. And this
Arushi,
is
before you
not the only
continue on, what age did you make this? project? At what age did you display this project?
I believe I was about 9 years old, actually. Um, so it was actually a fun experience because like this is like I just used simple motors that were lying around. And then I remember like researching how to code a motor, and then using something called an Arduino, which is basically like a microprocessor, like what you have in your computers.
Okay.
And so it's like a mini computer, you could say. And it allows you to control so many interesting things. And motors is one of the easiest things to do. So I just basically found out after research how to control these motors, then decided to put three of them, and then they controlled both the arms and the legs. And at first, I remember like I was directly connecting the dolls to the motors, but then I realized that wasn't really working, so I had to add string. So I think that's also part of the process. Like your first design will not be the best design for sure, but it's important that you start somewhere, and then later on you can always improve, see how what things worked well, see what things did not work well, and based on that make your next model, and then keep on improving as time goes on.
Yes, the beginning stage is always the hardest one to get past.
That's true. But once you get started, then that's the 50% already done.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank
Okay, you can continue on.
you. And over the last years, I haven't just made puppets, I've made rockets, rovers, and so forth. And I'm going to share a few of these with you really quick. So, how many of you guys have seen a rocket launch before? It doesn't have to be live, could have been on a video somewhere, maybe live streamed on YouTube. And I've seen a few of those, and it kind of made me wonder, why can't I create my own rocket too? Like, of course, I didn't have millions of dollars available like big companies like NASA have, but I had household materials, and I hoped that would be enough. So I used a drilling machine. I started learning how to drill. I started learning how to glue stuff, and then um, basically got a rocket kit from my local astronomy center. And I was able to follow instructions, put the strings together, glue stuff, super glue stuff, and then finally put the rocket together. And this was a really great experience to get some hands-on skills. And I learned about rocket motors, how they work, because they're very different from normal motors. And then I learned about how to be safe while doing these things, because of course we're using drilling machines, everything, so that's a safety hazard. So you have to make sure always to use protection, glasses, gloves while doing these to make sure you don't get injured. But at the end, it was really satisfying because I got to go out and actually launch these rockets and put them in the sky, which was pretty cool to me. So here I'm going to show you another video because I decided while launching my rocket, why not actually attach a camera to the rocket to see like the camera POV, see what the camera is seeing. So that's exactly what I did. And here's a short video. So this is right before the rocket was launching. So this is the countdown. You can see now the parachute just deployed. So the rocket reached its max height and now it's slowly going down. Of course, one thing is that rockets move a lot, they spin a lot, so you don't even know where they're gonna land. And I remember this rocket that took about 10 minutes to find just because it was so far away from where we launched it. But this was a really nice experience because it allowed me to actually see a rocket go up so high in space. And I was really fascinated. Like, if you can do that with just a few simple materials, then what couldn't you do?
Okay. Arushi, just a simple request that some parents in the chat are asking for you to use simpler language, as some of the students are very young.
Okay, yeah, for sure, that works. Um, so after I launched my rocket up in space, I thought, what else could I do? Because as I said, normally the first model isn't always the best model. You can always find ways to improve. So I decided, why not attach or get live data from my rockets? Like I had a camera, but why not get something else? So I added a sensor to my rocket. And this sensor, I coded using a microprocessor, so another mini computer. And this was called the microbit. And these are really fun and easy to use because they have lights, they have you can attach wires, you can attach sensors, you can do a lot with them. And the coding is very, very easy. So I programmed this microbit to basically see how fast the rocket was moving and see how the speed of the rocket changes over time. So that's exactly what I did. And you can see here there's a graph. So on the x-axis is the time. So at the beginning, the rocket was moving, then it got launched up into in the sky. And then in the y-axis is like how fast the rocket is moving. So it
Oh,
was really interesting to see how this changed over time.
all right.
Um, though, so I had already launched something in the sky, but I also wanted to make a project on the ground, in particular rovers. And in 2017, I had made a project where I got the chance to win a hackathon called the Canadian Space Apps Challenge. And because I got to win it, they invited me for a tour of their headquarters, so where all the robots were being built and where the astronauts were being trained, and I even got to meet the new Canadian astronauts. And it was the coolest part was actually seeing a demo of a lunar rover. So seeing how it worked on rocks, how it was climbing over obstacles, and so forth. And this was really fun, and I thought I wanted to build one of these too. So that's when I started building rovers. And what I did is I found an old metal plate lying around in my house, which I decided was going to be the body of the robot, as you can see here. Then I attached a big battery pack to my robot to power it. I had four wheels, which I attached on the sides. And then to the wheels, I attached motors to make the wheels move. And I tested it out. I used a remote controller to basically control the robot, tell it what direction to go. And it was really fun. And then one of the best parts was actually being able to bring my robot outside and have it compete with huge robots from different universities. So I got to compete. So in this image here, you can see the small robot is mine, and then the huge robot here is from a university. And it was actually pretty cool because like the challenge was you had to make the robot go forward, go up obstacles, um, navigate different obstacles, and then there was a set of different challenges. And it was really exciting to have actually won against one of the other teams. So here's a nice video of competing towards against another robot. So the small one is mine. You can see it's going over pieces of wood very fast. So far, we're in the lead. You can see it's a very long terrain, but seems like the robot got stuck in the middle. Maybe some big obstacle. But we're turning around, we're figuring it out. And you can see the other robot we left in the dust, and we're right in front, very close to the finish line. And now the big obstacle comes up. And then you can see the robot get stuck. It's in the distance, but you can see it get stuck on the top, but we push it back down. And the other robot is still quite far away. And now you can see the robot was able to go all the way till the finish line. Oh, right. Actually, oh, yes, we're loading a brick onto the robot because that was also one of the challenges to be able to put an object onto the robot. You can see the bigger robot is trying to catch up now. Goes over the big obstacle with no problem because it's so big. And you can see that now they're loading onto the brick. And our robot was actually able to win this round, which was pretty cool. So you can see dimly our robot is about here, and then finally the other robot came to the finish line too.
Miss Arushi, I have a question. What's the purpose of putting a brick on the rover? Because I am
Yeah,
assuming this is all related to what rovers actually do on other planets. So what's the purpose of putting a brick on the rover?
exactly. Yeah, that's a really great question. And this was a rally called the Mars Rover Rally. So as the name suggests, it's kind of made to replicate like a Mars-like terrain. So I thought, so each of these challenges represent a different obstacle that you might face in Mars. For example, you saw there was the whole path is made out of gravel, for example, which is because Mars is a very rocky planet. And then you can see the loading of a brick onto the robot is to show that the robot is able to pick stuff up basically, and that because that's what you would need on Mars. Like if you have some sample somewhere that you want to bring back with you, you would need to lift it up, put it on you, go back to wherever you need to be. Or if you need to
Okay.
move something from one place of the planet to the other place of the planet, you would need to this capability. So just
Okay.
making sure you're able to carry a brick, or in this case, was to represent that.
Okay. That's interesting to know. All right. You can continue.
Yeah, for sure. And this was a really cool rally. We lost some matches, we won some matches, but in the end, I was able to see what worked well with the robot. In this case, it was very agile and fast compared to the other robots, and what didn't work so well. Because this was a small robot, so it had trouble going over the big obstacles,
Yeah.
like that big pyramid one that you saw earlier.
Yeah.
And so there I was able to see what I should improve on, what worked well, what I should keep, and then eventually keep building these robots, keep improving them as time goes on. And
Oh,
don't think once you finish a project, you can't come back to it later. Like maybe you have a project lying around that's 1 year old that you finally, or you just thought up an idea for, then go ahead and do it because it's never too late to keep improving these projects. And I would also like to talk about battle bots because I feel like this is a very fun topic for everyone. And this is when basically two robots come together and fight and see which one wins. So it makes for some very interesting matches. And I decided to build first a 30-pound robot. So this is a big, quite heavy robot, and it would be competing against other robots. So you had to find what do you want the robot to look like? Do you want it to be heavy? Do you want it to be agile? What do you want it? So this robot took about 2 months to build, and it was a really big learning opportunity actually, because there was a lot of things that you needed to do in this robot. Like you couldn't just attach the wheels and everything, because you needed to attach chains connecting the motors to the wheels. And I learned how to get chain. I learned how to cut the chain at the right position. Um, and then change basically drilling, lots of drilling was involved, and even soldering for soldering some of the wires. So, of course, safety glasses is a must in all cases since you're working with big tools. But it was really fun, and sometimes you made mistakes. Sometimes they were hard, like maybe you drilled in the wrong spot and you can't really undo that. But then you find ways to fix the problems that you made so that the robot works fine.
okay.
And then once I'd created the robot, I got to test it in BattleBot fights. But before that, I also had a second robot, and you can see by the image that it looks much smaller. And this is a 1 pound robot, so it's very light. And this only took 2 weeks to build. And it was really fun to build because even small robots, this is actually where things become more interesting because you want to see what is the weapons that you want to use. Like, do you want to have a wedge, which will make the other robot slide? Do you want to have fire? Do you want to have spinning wheels? To basically cut through the other robot. And it was really fun fighting these robots too because um it was really interesting to see the other creative ideas other competitors had found. And one thing that happened is that the robot broke a lot because people had like fire, people had like chains and everything. And it actually made me learn a new skill, how to quickly take apart robots, how to quickly fix wheels, how to quickly fix wires, how to quickly charge the robot, and it was a really fun experience. But fighting the big robot, that was definitely very fun. And I have a video here that I'm going to show you in just a moment. But you
Okay.
can see this is a model of what the robot looked like in the end.
Okay.
So you can see that we had the big robot here, and we also had a sort of wedge in the front. And then, sorry, the wedge is here. You can see it a bit better in this picture. And then we had another rod sticking out from the back that we had just found around lying in the house and thought, why not actually add this rod? And
Okay.
then
Someone's actually asking, what did you name your battle bot? Did
sorry,
you
could
give
you
your, have you given your battle bot a name?
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, in the second image, you can see it right here. It's we call the robot Black Hole, which was a fun name because we just thought like it was such a sturdy robot and really love astronomy, so why not like merge the two together? And Black Hole seemed like a fantastic name and like a name that sounds good when you're competing with other robots, like battle like Black Hole versus another team. So here's a short video of the robot. So you can see Black Hole, this is our robot. We're switching it on. And this is the other robot that we're competing against. They have lots of spinning wheels. So the match is about to start, just getting everything ready. So we had quite an audience here, which was pretty fun. And now the robots are fighting. So you can see the robot got the chance to go under us, which was one of our biggest weaknesses. But luckily these matches have you get 3 different tries to win. You'll also see there is a pole in the middle of the arena, and this is so that you need to use some driving skills because otherwise it would be really easy just to bang into the robot. So they want you to turn around, maneuver, and try to actually use your skills to win. So you can see we were at like an even match for a bit. And unfortunately, they got under our robot, which is something that was inevitable, but it means that it's very hard to get out of that position. So this match we unfortunately lost, but it didn't really matter because at the same time we got to see how good our robot performed. What maybe didn't work so well, which was being able to get under the robot, and what we could improve upon for the next BattleBot competition.
And how exactly do they say when a winner takes place? I've
So
never watched the
basically,
battle bot, so my
oh
nothing.
yeah. So basically, your goal is to get the other robot outside of the circle.
Okay.
So when it falls onto the ground, then it's counted as the other team wins. So that's the only way to win. Or if the other robot stops working. So
Okay. That's very interesting to
that's
know.
why we're trying to push each other out. And you can see our wedge got stuck up. So that didn't really work too well for us. Yeah, and as you can see, we lost, but we still learned new skills along the way, so it's fine. And there were several other matches after this. So one last thing I would like to talk about is submarines. So I talked about going up, I talked about on the ground. Now, how about underwater? So I looked again for tools around the house. I looked for old water bottles that I wasn't using anymore because they were too old. I looked around for like Lego and Meccano, which I used to play with earlier, and just household materials like zip tags. And then I tried to combine them all together to create a submarine, which is like a robot that goes under the water. So have you guys ever wondered like what's under the water? How does it look like under there? Well, that's what I was wondering. So that's why I decided to create this robot. And I attached four different motors, which allowed the robot to go forward, backwards, left, right. And it also allowed the robot to go up and down inside the water. And then I attached a remote control to control the robot. And then I put it in a local lake, Lake Ontario. So this is a lake where there's lots of waves and everything. So it was hard to control the robot, but here's a short video. Because of course I had to attach a camera to the submarine because I wanted to actually see what was underwater. So I attached the camera and started a live feed of the video. So this is under the water. You can see it's quite shallow. You can see the algae and everything at the bottom. And it was really cool because I never thought the bottom of the lake would look like this. And it actually did. And it was also really fun because you got to learn how to control a robot when it was very wavy. And sometimes the robot was not going in the direction you wanted to because it was too much wind. And you had to see how to go against that. And at the same time, you become better at driving robots. So you can see those broken leaves in the water too. Yeah, that's the video. And right now, this puts an end to a few of the interesting projects that I've done over the years. But now I'm gonna talk about how you can actually hack your creativity, hack your curiosity, and actually make your own fun projects. So I have four main steps on how to build a project. First, and most importantly, be curious. Ask questions. And actually think of an idea. Think of an idea that you're interested in, something that you're passionate about. Like if you're interested in astronomy, then you would want to do something based maybe on stars, planets, something like that. Think of a question that you have that you want answered, maybe, and then see how you want to solve it. Second, look for items around your house. This could be anything, like old toys, as I mentioned before, maybe just zip ties, scissors, anything you would need, and look for tools that you might need, like screwdrivers, glue gun to glue stuff, a drilling machine to drill holes if you need that, or even like old Meccano that you're not using. Step number three, and I think this is a really important step, because normally you can't build a project on your own because it's really hard, which means you need to seek help from communities around you. And this is why it's important to ask your friends, ask your family for help whenever you need it. Or if you're operating like a drilling machine, you might want some supervision. Or just find people who are interested in the same subjects as you, because together you can really make help each other and make each other move forward. And finally, the fourth step is teach others, which is really important, and I'm going to share why right after. But first, and one of the most important parts, sketching your ideas. And you can sketch just these ideas anywhere. You can use paper, you can use your computer, you can even use a table sometimes, or a blackboard, and just draw what you want your idea to look like. And sketching can include how many things you want. You can sketch how you want it to look. Maybe you can sketch what materials you want your robot to have. Maybe you can sketch what actions you want your robot to do, or even how you want your robot to operate. And it's really fun because that gives you the chance to brainstorm with yourself, think of ideas, see if they'll work, see how easy they are to operate, and see what you will need to actually make these ideas possible. Next, finding material. And I think it's really important to say that do not throw away your own toys and just open them up sometimes, look into them, and see if there's any useful materials. Because most of my projects have come from materials that I've just found lying around my house unused, like a lunchbox or a water bottle, as you can see in these images. And these have all led to really cool projects. And it shows that even the most basic item can give you very good results. Um, Another example, this is actually a really fun one, um, where I attached my old stuffed animal to a wooden board and basically put a motor and put a pencil, and the robot was basically able to draw random figures on a piece of paper. And I got the chance to show this to other kids, and it's a really interactive idea. And that's not the only way I've used old toys. I've used old Lego. Like, I'm sure many of you guys have played with Yet Lego or are still playing with Yet Lego. And these are really fun because they're very easy to make and you can make whatever structure you want. And this means that I was able to make a drone with the Lego by just attaching two pieces of Lego in a cross motion and then putting motors on it. So this shows really how just like simple materials like glue guns and Lego, you can make such amazing stuff. Next is gaining support because it's really important that you don't need to do a project by yourself. Sometimes it moves much faster when you have a community of people around you and helping you across the way. And that's another reason why I like these hackathon events, because they have so many people around you who are always in the same interest in the same subject as you and willing to help. And this allows you to improve whatever ideas you have. Maybe you can talk about your ideas to your friends, family, and they can give you ideas. And maybe it'll improve your ideas. And maybe you can just talk about what solutions you have planned and just even presenting it to another group is always very helpful because sometimes it's only when you talk about your project that you actually understand its full meaning.
Arushi, one student actually brought this up. Their question is, what do they do when their friends and families are not interested in this? So what should they do in that case?
That's a very good question. And it happens a lot. And I think one of the best ways is that don't limit yourself to people you already know. Sometimes that's the fun part. When you're making these projects, you get to meet new people. And if no one in, for example, your school or family is interested in science or astronomy, that's completely fine. And one thing is that there is a huge online community. And with supervision, you can definitely reach out to researchers from around the world or people who are interested in the same subject as you. And you can even reach out to open communities, which is like a big group of people interested in one subject. Like, for example, I'm members of my local astronomy club, where I get to basically talk with people around Canada, both in person and online about astronomy. And then I'm sure India has lots of these type of initiative too, which allow you to basically meet with other people who are interested in space. And sometimes these people might be slightly older than you, they might be adults, but that's fine because in the end, just end up getting more ideas. So don't limit your community to everyone who you already know, but try to reach out to other people. And also, I think joining local clubs, if you have any, related to the subject that you're interested in, is always very helpful. And finally, point number 4 is presenting your project. Because it's not really enough to just complete your project, then give up on it. I believe no project is complete till you've presented it to other kids, other families, other people, and actually talked about your projects. And it actually allows you to make sure that you yourself understand your project fully. Because people ask all types of questions about your project, how it's made, why did you make it? And this really allows you to show your project to the audience. And it doesn't even need to be always talking. Sometimes, if you're good at creating apps, you could maybe make an app and show people the app. If you're good at making physical models, you could make one of those models and then show it to people. And it's always fun to give demos to your fellow students and then let them actually experience what you were able to make. And for every single one of my projects, I made sure to demo it to several people. And if you're wondering where to demo it, it could be anywhere. You could show your project at your school to your fellow classmates. You could maybe go on street festivals. You can sign up and then you can present your project to other kids. You can set up stalls. Sometimes there's events where it's all about showing projects. So you can apply to these events. And I've presented my projects everywhere on streets, inside libraries, inside studios, everywhere. And it's a really fun experience because sometimes you even get other students motivated in science. So,
Arushi, this is one student is asking, like, what should they do if they do not know the most basic of this? Like, they have no idea where to start even. What should they do in that case? But
I
they're
think,
interested in it. They're interested in it, but they have no idea where to start. So they are
okay, yeah,
asking.
that's a really good question. And I think this comes down all to your curiosity. Like, you're interested in astronomy, let's say, but you don't know how to go about it. Well, think of a question you have about astronomy. Maybe you want to know what color the stars are. Maybe you want to know how to build a rocket. Whatever interests you, whatever makes you want to do it. And once you have an idea, then I think the best way is to see what you have around you. Because sometimes you look very far away for ideas, very far away for materials that you can use to make your project possible, when there's actually material right lying next to you. So let's say you wanted to find the color of stars. Then maybe do a bit of research, see what color stars can be, see how to find the color of stars, and maybe even replicate someone else's whatever they're doing. Because before you make something of your own, maybe it's easiest to see a project that someone else did, maybe online, maybe a friend, and see how they did it, and then try to make or replicate the exact same project that they made. At the beginning, maybe you don't need your own idea. And I think that's really important because once you're able to replicate something or copy someone else's model, then it can be something very simple. And then it gives you like the confidence you need to keep building your own projects in the future. And it also allows you to learn different skills. Like maybe for your project, you will need to know how to code. And maybe you've never coded before. So maybe looking at online free tutorials on how to code, joining local communities where they teach you how to code, to build up that skill that you need, and then using what you learned into your project. And that's something I actually always do. Whenever I learn a new skill, I try to involve it in whatever project I'm doing. Like if you're interested in music also, for example, why not add music to your project? And I'm actually going to talk about a project that I use music and science in just in a bit. Um, but I've told you how to catch your curiosity, but if this hasn't given you a good enough idea yet, let me show you some examples where I was able to do that. Have you guys heard of the solar eclipse? This is when the moon goes in front of the sun and it creates a dip in the light because suddenly the sun is not there anymore. It's getting blocked by the moon. And this happened in 2017. And it's actually going to happen again very soon. Oh, sorry, it just happened. I forget the dates, but solar eclipses happen very often. And whenever a solar eclipse happens, it's a good learning opportunity because I thought, what changes would be in my environment? I thought, How dark will it get? Will there be any other effects? Maybe animals will be affected. Maybe maybe birds will fly away. Maybe birds will fly towards the sun. Who knows? And I had so many questions in my mind. And this is where the curiosity part really comes in, asking questions. And then I thought, how can I actually get these answers? And that's when I decided to make my project called Solar X. And it started all with a tiny lunchbox. I wanted to measure several things. I wanted to measure how the light changes over time. So I added a light sensor to my box. I wanted to measure the change in temperature. Because there was less light, would there be less heat too? So I decided to add a temperature sensor to my box. And it's really, each sensor basically answered each question I had. And to control these sensors, it was really easy. I just used another mini computer called an Arduino. And if you're looking to make hardware projects, I would really suggest looking into Arduinos because they're relatively easy to use and you can do so much. You can make motors spin, you can control sensors, and it's all really useful. So, in a few weeks, I was able to assemble everything. I decided to store all the data in one sensor, have another sensor for light, another sensor for sound, and so forth. And then I all programmed all of these sensors using the mini computer. And once I was done, I used a glue gun to glue everything to my lunchbox. So these are just all the sensors that I used. So you can see there's a lot of them. And this is because it was a very rare event. So I was trying to capture as much as I could. And coding definitely played a big role. And I learned more coding along the way because sometimes you don't need to learn all your skills beforehand. Sometimes you learn the skills while making the project itself. And so you had to learn how to write code, the syntax for the code, and different parameters. Then you had to do something called calibrating each sensor, which means setting the sensors so that they work well in your environment. And then before I went to the solar eclipse, I tested it at different locations to make sure my sensor box was working well. Of course, sometimes your project won't really work well on the first try. Sometimes you'll get an error. Sometimes nothing will happen. And that is all part of the process. The important thing is that you're able to find the problem. You're able to troubleshoot, even if it takes a long time. Just maybe go over your code, go over the wires you attached, and see where it could have gone wrong. So just quickly, I got the chance to measure data before the eclipse and during the eclipse. So to get a baseline data, see what the normal values are, and see how they change during the eclipse. So there was a lot of data here. And this made me learn how to use big data, huge data sets. And actually, this was my first introduction to big data. And this was the day itself of the big solar eclipse. And we had managed to find a spot that was not too crowded so that our sensor would have a direct view of the sky and of the light and basically the moon covering the sun. And this is the results we got. And you can see that right now you can see the change in light. Right here is when the solar eclipse was. And you can see there's a huge dip in light. You can see it's very obvious. The light went down considerably. And this proves that indeed the light did go down and it answered some of my questions. I also had different sensors like temperature sensor, and I measured how they changed during the eclipse. And I did see indeed a temperature drop. So my hypothesis was correct. And one of the best parts, as I mentioned, your project isn't really finished if you perform outreach. So I wrote the NASA Globe app, which keeps track of the total eclipses. I shared what my model had done. And it was amazing to get a response from them. And um, basically, it motivated me to keep going. And that sensor wasn't all I did. Sometimes visual observations are the best because just what I did is every 5, 6 minutes, I would look at the sky, and I would see basically how much of the sun is getting blocked by the moon, and I would sketch it. And at the end, I put all of my sketches into this table, and you can see first only a part of the sun was blocked, then eventually the full sun got blocked, and this was the totality, the full eclipse. And then eventually it started getting unblocked again. Another project I would like to talk about is Deep Space Musical. And this is a really fun project actually, and because it's based on telescopes in space. How many of you guys have heard about the Hubble Space Telescope or any space telescope? And these telescopes are really fun because they're these huge instruments in space which are getting these very precise images, getting these very yeah. And Hubble Space Telescope has been orbiting the Earth for a very long time now, and it's taken millions of observations. So I wanted to convert the images that this telescope was taking into a musical because I thought, why not let the visually impaired or the blind people also experience the joy of the data we were collecting? And this was my real idea, my real motivation to this project. And this telescope has taken so many amazing projects. I mean, sorry, so many amazing pictures. And I was thinking, how can I convert these pictures into music while still keeping their beauty, still having each image its own unique music? So what I did is I converted my image into grayscale, which means from colored, it went to black and white. And then from that, I basically grouped some of my pixels together, which is something called pooling. And then for each of my pixels that I had at the end, I assigned each pixel a different note and different frequency. Like for example, if the pixel was really dark, like maybe black, then it would have a lower frequency and maybe a C note. And if it was a really bright pixel, like very close to white, then maybe it would have a very high frequency. And maybe the letter or the note will be A in a piano, for example. And then after this, I had every pixel of this image converted into a different note. So how do I do this? Well, this definitely required lots of coding. In this case, I used a coding language called Python, which is very fun, but because the syntax isn't too hard. But again, it takes a lot of coding, and the code is not going to work well the first time. Sometimes you'll need to try again repeatedly till you find the right code. So this is the first image that I used, and this is called the Pillars of Creation. So I'm going to play the music for you guys. So this is the music that my code thought was best associated with this picture.
Arushi, will you play it again? I'm not able to hear it.
Oh, really? You're not able to hear it?
I heard the beginning, but I did not hear the. Could you play it again just so that the students can hear it again?
Hope you were able to hear it this time.
Yes.
Yeah, and I actually took three main images in whole. So the first image that I just showed you was called the Pillars of Creation. So that's where stars are born. So the second one I wanted to do was actually just a galaxy of stars. So I used another picture, and decided to see what my algorithm would produce. So here's another musical. Yeah, so you'll notice that there are several different notes that keep playing, and each note is associated to a different basically group of pixels. And the final image is the death of stars, which was a supernova. And basically I thought I had done the birth of stars, I had done the progress of stars, so why not do the death of stars now when they die? So this is the third and final image, and this is the musical my algorithm produced. So you will notice in this one there was lots of high pitched notes, which were very squeaky, and this is because you can see all of this purple, this very bright color was creating such high notes. So you can see like the slight differences in between each image and based on the colors, how different musical notes were produced. And this is just quickly the completed musical. I'll play the first 10 seconds. So this is all of them combined together. Yeah, but that's just a short overview of one of the projects that I made where hacking your creativity was really essential. And another one I would like to talk about is the Trappist project. And this is a
Arshi, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but one of the students is there's not one, several students are asking that they would love to make projects similar to what you are making. They would love to start making the projects, but they're not sure. But they do not have the sensors and motors. So what should they do in that case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one option is consider buying them because you might not have sensors and motors around your house, but they're really cheap. And sometimes you only need one sensor, you only need one or two motors. And in the end, you can keep reusing them for different projects. So it's really worth it to invest in one or two pieces of good material. Or if, for example, if you have any old toys that you are using, do try and break them apart because you might find something unexpected inside them. And I think yeah, it's really important that maybe it's unexpected. Maybe you weren't thinking that this toy would have anything interesting inside it, but it turns out to have exactly what you need. So I think if you do not find anything in your household, then that's when you need to reach out, maybe see if you know anyone who has these materials, or maybe if there is any cheap materials that you can find online or in local stores, which could give you the basic building blocks that you need, because you only need to buy very few of these things. And then after that, you can keep reusing them for hundreds of different projects if you want to.
And where is it possible to buy motors and sensors?
Um, well, if you're looking online, then even something like Amazon or Alibaba can give you what you need.
Okay.
Or in India, if you know any local stores, where it's specific for motors, because normally every country has its different shops. But even with a tiny bit of research, just search online motors and you'll find places where you can buy them.
Okay. And there's some students who would love to listen to the Song of the Stars again.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. I'll play it again. Here it is. Yeah, so this was the musical. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry, I might skip one or two just for the sake of time. Um, okay, so science fairs. I'm sure many of you guys have heard of science fairs before. It's a really fun events where you get to compete locally and basically with your own projects, and then compete with other students to see who has the best project. But it's not all about the competition. You get to, at the same time, see what other students are doing. Maybe you get ideas for your other projects. And these science fair projects do not need to be complex. They can actually be the simplest thing ever. And that's how I started. So in grade two, I made this robot called the Roll It Roll It robot. So what this is I took a jar that I had, and I actually have it with me here. So I took an old jar that I had, that I used to keep food inside, and I cleaned it up. And then I wanted to make this jar basically move. I wanted to make it roll. And that's it. So all I did is I attached a motor inside this and told it the motor to move. And that's all. But it was my first science fair project, and I was really happy with it. And it actually went out quite well because I got the chance to like make a whole poster about my project, show them materials I'd used, and then talk to other kids who were also making experiments like volcanoes and other stuff. And it was really fun. And I suggest if you know about any local science fairs to participate in them because you will not regret it. It's really a chance to have fun, talk with other people, and also show off your science. So this is a short video about the robot.
Did you want to show us how it rolls? Hey, did you want to listen? She's giving a presentation. She has a rolling robot, and she's going to show us if she can make it roll.
So you can see the robot is rolling here in the image.
How cool is that?
So it was pretty cool for me. Like the robot was rolling. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So it was a huge success. And it motivated me. It made me want to do more. It made me want to continue making these science fair projects, which is why I participated in science fairs almost every year, each time with different projects. For example, in grade three, I wanted to make a Python chatbot. So a robot that could ask you questions and then have a conversation with you. And that's exactly what I did. And in this image, you can see other kids testing the robot, typing to it, and it was typing back. And these are very simple projects. And if you don't know how to get started, maybe think of something simple. Like maybe if you input when you were born, it'll give you your age, or something very simple like that. Because the most important step is to start making these projects. Then I started to get more complex projects as I developed more skills. And I started using artificial intelligence, which is a very fun concept. And again, for this project, the main goal was basically a robot that can see if you're happy or if you're sad. And it can try to cheer you up, make you happy if you're sad. So I used an old oil can that I found around in my house, attached a motor, attached a motor for the head, two motors for the arms, and then control these motors. And then I put a camera on my robot so it can look at your face and look at your emotion. And this robot could basically, if you were happy, its head would be happy too. But if you were sad, it would turn its head into a sad face and then lift one of its arms to give you a high five. And this passion kept on growing. And grade 7 is when I started to become really, really interested in astronomy. And all my projects suddenly started becoming very astronomy based. I remember I got a chance to go to this huge observatory in Canada, and I got the chance to view planets, stars at such a zoomed in angle. That was so cool. And um, this made me think I want to observe more of these objects. And this is when I got my first telescope. You can see this tiny telescope in the image. And then my first publication, where I was talking about all the observations that I had, all the objects I had observed before. And these were observed through many different telescopes. And it was really cool. And it just motivated me to go even further. And in grade 7, so this is where my project started getting more complex. I wanted to find unknown objects in space. Like in space, there's the stars, there's the planets, there's the asteroids. But what about the asteroids that have not been discovered yet? I wanted to find those asteroids. So I created an algorithm that basically looks at images from the sky and then finds all of these known objects and then removes them completely. Because if you remove all the known objects in the image, you're left with the unknown ones. And then you can actually find them. So this was really fun, and I got to find unknown asteroids. And outreach, as I mentioned, is a very important part because your project is not complete unless you've done outreach. So I started giving presentations and basically published my whole code so that other students can replicate what I have done. And this was fun because I got to win the top award in Canada for my project. And so this made me the top award winner of the Canada-wide Science Fair 2022, along with a few other awards. And this really motivated me to continue going into science fairs. And that's why this year again I participated, this time with a new project. Not finding unknown asteroids, but finding more information about asteroids. Finding how bright the asteroid is, finding how fast the asteroid rotates, and so forth. And this was a really fun experience. And the best part was my results actually being correct, and my results validating with NASA close to 100%. And once again, I was really surprised to be able to win the top award at my local science fair for the second year in a row, breaking a huge record. And the best part was that this allowed me to represent Canada internationally. And it was a really cool experience because I got to meet youth from all around the world really interested in science. And I got to win the second prize. And I would just like to finish off by talking about a few life lessons that I learned across my projects. And the first one is that ideas can come at any age. You are not too young to make a project. You are not too old to make a project. Any age is the right age. And second, that don't just finish up an idea. Commit to your idea. Make sure that that idea progresses. Turn your idea into a small project. Make sketches, draw, make small models with whatever materials you have. It will require a lot of hard work, but you must make sure to keep going. And third, make sure to always show your project because showing is always better than telling. When you show, people are more excited and more willing to support you in your future projects. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for being able to make this fantastic presentation, and I would be really happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Well, thank you very much, Arushi. That was very interesting to hear about. It was actually, I really liked hearing the Deep Space musical. That captivated me a lot. And now we are going to the question and answers portion of our interaction. And again, I'd like to remind all students that if you would like me to ask Miss Arushi to answer your burning questions, please submit your questions to the Google form that's pinned to the chat. Now, Miss Arushi, what would you consider yourself to be, a space scientist or an astronomer, and what's the difference between both?
That's a good question. And to be honest, both of them have similarities. And you can be both a space scientist and an astronomer at the same time. Because an astronomer is more when you're looking at the sky, when you're trying to observe through a telescope, taking notes of your observations, and actually using the sky as your data. Whereas space scientist, you can use almost everything. You can use images from a satellite, you can use temperature, you can use light. So, and you can involve whatever other subjects you want with it. So I think I would consider myself both a space scientist and astronomer, simply because both of them, while they're interrelated, they also have their differences. And I think that mixing astronomy, mixing looking at the sky with science is the best and most fun part for me.
All right. So many students, such as Yashiv Nagpal from DPS Sector 45 of Class 3, would like to know what subjects they should pick up so that they can pursue astronomy. So, like, do they focus on science, or is there other things they should focus on?
That's a good question. And I think for astronomy, you should definitely for sure focus on maths and science, simply because when you're looking at astronomy, you will need to know the maths behind what you're doing. Like if you're looking at, I've used this example before, the color of the stars. You will have to know why the stars have different colors, and this all comes down to science. But while it's important to do these subjects, never limit yourself to maths and science. That's another important thing. Like maths and science is really important, but also make sure to mix it in with other subjects. Like you mentioned the musical, and you can't do that just knowing maths and science. Sometimes you have to have the other hobbies like arts, music, and sometimes it's even funner to mix those subjects with your maths and astronomy projects to make it more cool. For example, I could have just would you prefer to have lots of graphs of data? Or would you prefer to see an image or look at a musical? Of course, you're going to say the last two, simply because it's more interactive and more fun. So I think maths and science are important, but also make sure to mix other subjects, whether it's sports or arts or anything else.
Okay. That's very important, mixing and having variety of interests. Oh, this is an interesting one. Avir Goyal from the Sacred Heart Convent International School is asking about the Chandrayaan-3 mission. He would like to know if is the money that was invested in the mission a waste?
No, it is definitely not. That was a very historical mission, actually. And if you look at the amount of money that was spent on that mission, you will see that it's much less compared to other big missions, showing how nicely um it was able to fit in the budget. And I think one thing that's very important is that you can never waste the money on space exploration. Some missions are successful, some missions fail, but even if they fail, you are not wasting money. And especially if we look at Chandrayaan 3, their mission was so cool. You wanted to look at the other side of the moon, the side of the moon that has never been explored before. And I think this is a very historical moment, if anything. Definitely no money has been wasted. Actually the opposite. The money was used probably to the best cause that it could have been. Because that is a side of the moon that we don't know much about. And so sending missions to the poles of the moon is very important so that we can more and better understand the solar system around us.
And then, like, since many students are here very interested in space, they're asking how should Sifat Jaggi from Prudence is asking how to prepare a student for space exploration from class 4.
Good question. And as I mentioned, you're never too young to start preparing. And if you're interested in space exploration, maybe you want to become an astronaut, for example, then go for it. I think the most important part at this age is to try out different things. because you're still very young, so you have lots of time on your hands and you can explore what you're really interested in. And if you're interested in space exploration, then go for it. Then I suggest maybe try to join online courses related to space exploration. Try to maybe learn more about the subject. In your free time, try to see what you can do. Maybe you want to design a spacesuit. Then you can make sketches, see how your idea works, compare it with existing models. So there's so many different ways you could approach these subjects. The most important thing is to actually think of an idea. Because you're interested in space exploration, let's say. But what about space exploration interests you? Do you have any questions about space exploration? Questions that maybe you want to know about? And try to get these questions answered. If there's no answer online, maybe create your own project to answer these questions.
Okay, and that's very interesting. And now there's lots of information is coming on, lots of discoveries are coming out in space science. So where can Shubh Mittal from Bal Bharati School would like to know where they should go so that they can be up to date with all these latest discoveries?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think one thing, like there's definitely many options. But one thing is looking at space agencies' websites because normally these space missions come from different space agencies, like America's Space Agency, Canadian Space Agency, India's Space Agency, and so forth. So just keeping track of all of them is definitely a very good way to know about different space missions that are happening right now. So maybe every week or two, just check the website, see if there's anything new. Or maybe search online space missions and then see if there's anything interesting that pops up. Or even subscribing to newsletters sometimes really helps because often websites have an option where you can say subscribe to newsletter, which means they'll give you like weekly updates on what's happening in the field of astronomy. And in my case, I'm subscribed to many newsletters, some about asteroids, some about all fields of science. An example is called the Quantum Journal, which you can just search online if you want to, but I find it very helpful because it keeps track of everything that's happening in astronomy, and they give it in a very interesting way.
Okay, that's a very interesting journal to keep track of. Then Saksham Deep Singh from St. Mary's School would like to know what is the benefit of sending the satellites to revolve from pole to pole instead of equator?
That's a great question. And while satellites isn't my field of expertise, I can definitely give an answer. So, satellites can orbit in different ways around the Earth, but the way we want them to orbit depends on what exactly we want the satellite to measure. For example, if we want the satellite to measure something about the temperature, like look at the temperature on the Earth or take pictures of the Earth, like Google Maps, for example, or something like that. Just get satellite view of the ground. Then we might want a satellite which is going towards different positions of the Earth. And I think it really depends on what the satellite is trying to observe. And if the satellite sometimes equator orbit might be fine, but sometimes you will need to go to the poles to get the specific data you're looking for.
Okay, that's interesting to know. And going back to gaining knowledge about space science and astronomy, do you have any books that you could recommend?
That's a good question. And yeah, I really like astronomy books because they're fun and at the same time you get to learn about astronomy. So a recommendation that I can give is Hidden Figures, for example. It's a book where three young American African women basically entered the space industry in a time where that wasn't really popular. So it shows like the struggles they faced, for example, and how like they went to NASA. So that's a space company, and they showed how they operated there. It's a really very well written book that I think you should definitely look at. It's also available as a movie. Another option, I remember reading this when I was younger, is like Space in 1 minute. So it kind of shows what happens in space in 1 minute, and you'd be surprised at how many things can happen.
Okay,
So those are just two examples.
Two very interesting books to look out for. And what is your thought about the percentage of living in Mars, the chances of us living in Mars? Because now
Okay,
we have
that's
Mars rovers there, we have several Mars rovers there, and it's like a hot topic right now.
yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I think definitely Mars has been a hot topic for a long time. We have so many rovers that's going there, um, like Perseverance and so forth, like the new ones that are coming up. And I think it's really probable that elements like water once was on Mars, and we've seen proof for this. But I think if life existed on Mars, it would have been a long, long time ago. And while I think there is some possibility of humans living on Mars, I think it'll definitely be not be the same experience as living on Earth. We would have to adapt. And that's also why we're not only limiting ourselves to Mars. We're looking at solar systems that are not our own solar system. We're looking for solar systems outside, planets that are not in our solar system that could contain forms of life. So definitely we are having our options open right now. And while I think Mars is a possibility, it's definitely not the only possibility.
Okay. And Gurshir Singh Panu from Prudence School would like to know, how does an astronaut suit not implode under the pressure in space?
That's a good question. And I can provide a brief answer, but if you want to do more, I really suggest you go and research this topic, because if you're interested in spacesuits, for example, then there's a lot of information online, and then you can find information, try to decode as much as you can. It might be a bit complex language, but there's a lot of information available. And I think the reason all comes down to the materials that these spacesuits were made, because they're not made in like the normal material, like the clothes that we have. They're made in very special materials that basically allow you to resist the effects of space, the radiation, the pressure, and everything else. So the materials have to be very solid, but at the same time, you have to be allowed to move freely inside of them, even if it's a bit hard. So I think these spacesuits are made while balancing out these two effects, making them as safe as possible from outside effects, while also making sure you can move in them.
Okay, that's interesting to know. And this was a hot topic a decade ago, but many of the students were not around when this happened and they do not understand it. So Aditya Mishra from DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon, would like to know, why was Pluto once considered a planet, but now it's considered to be a dwarf planet?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, it used to be a hot topic a long time ago. And the reason is simply decades ago, we had different types of instruments. Like when we were trying to look for planets, we were looking at planets through telescopes on the ground, and we were trying to observe them. And then we had found our local planets. We ended up finding Pluto eventually. And then it was at the beginning considered a planet. But now that our technology has advanced a lot, um, and that we've taken more observations of this dwarf planet now, we realized that this planet doesn't actually meet all the criteria to be a full-size planet. Basically, it met all the criteria except for one. And the reason is it has not cleared its neighboring region of other objects, which means it doesn't really perform those full orbits. And that means that since it did not really clear the area, that meant that we could not classify it as a real planet. So it was demoted to a dwarf planet, which is what we now refer to.
Okay. Siddharth Verma from CRPS Public School would like to know, how have you, at this age, how have you managed to learn such complex, difficult things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, I think the biggest reason is starting young. Like, if you start when you're really young, you know, your age, for example, you guys are in grade 1 to 5, and that's a really young age, and that's the perfect age to be starting. And I think I really got help from local communities around me. Like once I found out I was interested in, for example, astronomy, then I tried to find all the astronomy related clubs nearby. And I would go to the meetings, I would learn about astronomy projects that other people were doing, maybe a telescope someone was trying to build, a mirror someone was trying to build for a telescope, or cool observations someone took. And then this made me think, why can't I give my own presentations? Why can't I do my own stuff? And I started building these astronomy projects. And age doesn't really matter in this case because no matter your age, people are still willing to support you. And you have all the resources that you need to make a project. Online, you definitely have a lot of resources, communities to help you, websites where you can research information, and then even in person, family, friends, or clubs can definitely help you in your pursuit. So I think in my case, it was definitely starting young and having plenty of time.
All right. Many students are very interested to know how are you able to manage balancing your studies as well as projects simultaneous at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it comes down to time management. Like, of course, I get lots of homework too. I have extracurricular activities, sports, whatever else. And I think the true thing is if you're passionate about something, you will find time for it. Like, you will find times to do your homework quicker. You will find ways to manage your time, maybe create a schedule for yourself, list what you're going to do every day. And then set some targets for yourself. Like by the end of the week, I want to spend 5 hours doing this. And try to achieve your targets as best as you can. Maybe you only get 4 hours the first week. That's fine. But I think finding time will come from you. You have to see how you can manage your schedule the best you can. Maybe you can't play as much. Maybe you'll have to sacrifice something. But I think it's very important to keep a balance though. Keep your homework, make sure you do your homework for sure, make sure you do other stuff, and then try to find time to do what you're really passionate about as well.
Okay, so time management is a very important skill to do this. And since we're coming to the end of this thing, we have one last question, which I think will be beneficial to all the students on our who has attended this session. And it comes from Shivesh Sharma from Prudence Public School, who would like to have some tips from you on your journey to become an astronomer and space science, as well as some experiences that will aid them in pursuing a career in this field.
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you're looking for a career in science or astronomy, then for sure coming to these courses are definitely a good start. But if you really want to pursue this interest, then maybe it's time to reach out to someone who's already in a career, for example. Maybe it's time if you know this person who's done some really cool stuff in astronomy, maybe if you're interested in spacesuits, maybe someone who's designed a spacesuit before, try to reach out to people who you know are really good at the subject, who are really passionate about the subject, maybe with questions you have, maybe with questions about careers. But I think the very important thing at this stage is don't focus too much on what you're going to do in the long future, like what job you're going to do or anything like that, but more focus on what you can do right now with what you have right now. And if you know maybe that you want to go into designing something, maybe then you know you need to pick up designing skills. So if you know what you're interested in, then it's maybe time to start picking up the skills that you will need to work on these big topics. And it doesn't even need to be, you don't need to pick up all the skills at once. And you don't need to achieve your goal at once. I think it's also very important to learn how to take smaller steps. And don't do everything at once. Maybe set daily goals for yourself. Today, I want to learn how to write the most basic line of code, how to print something. And the next day, I want to maybe do something else. And set these very easily achievable goals for yourself so you can actually track your progress over time and make sure you keep doing it. And yeah, that's another important point. Keep doing it. Make sure that you don't just do everything on one day and then forget about it for the next month. Make sure you have weekly progresses, and if you're interested in a subject, then keep being interested in the subject, keep doing it. And sometimes you'll find out a subject doesn't really work out for you. Like maybe you thought you'd be interested in something and then you're not. And that's also perfectly fine. And since you're at such a young age, you can always keep switching subjects, trying out different subjects until you find the one that best fits you.
Okay, that's very interesting to know. And unfortunately, it looks like our time with you has come to an end. Thank you, Miss Arushi Nath, for your time today and for attending our session, as well as thank you to all the students for their participation in Space Explorers workshop, online interaction with an astronomer. We'll see you next time.